What's up, everybody? Nathan here, and today I want to talk to you guys about some results I've had recently playing Jeskai Geist. I want to cover a few things in this video. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about where I've been, then I'm going to talk about the two results that I've had and a few of the card choices. The third thing is I'm going to talk about how I came about the lists, and then fourth, if you still want to stick around for it, something kind of zany that I've known about for a long time. I don't think I've ever mentioned it. I've never really tried it, but it's a thing that could exist, and I'll just mention it to get your feedback. Okay, so where I've been. First, I'm really tired. It's just past midnight, and I have to get up relatively early. I need to go to bed, but I just 5-0'd a competitive league, and that's the reason I wanted to make the video. So please bear with me if I have a little trouble collecting my thoughts. Okay, so where I've been. It's been really busy. And I know that might be kind of a cliche thing to say, but as some of you might have remembered from some past videos, there's more of a story to it. I'll just say that I auditioned for a play. Well, I'll tell like the 5-second version. I wanted to get my daughter involved in theater to kind of give her some new things to try to do. She didn't want to do it. I promised her that I would audition with her. She said okay. When the time to audition came, she refused to go. I felt like I had to, I was giving her the whole like parental spiel about how you have to stick to your commitments. So obviously I went. I ended up getting a lead role in a play called Our Town, with no theater experience. It was super fun. I really enjoyed it. But it was a super large time commitment. Since I was a lead, I would be at practice like 3 nights a week during the week, and because I work for a U.S. company and I live in Europe, I also have meetings every Tuesday until 10. So Monday I wouldn't come back till 10:30. Tuesday I'd have meetings till 10, and then Wednesday and Thursday I'd be gone until 10 something, and then Sunday rather, I'd have practice from like 2 to 6. And so it was a massive time commitment, and I just had no time for magic. I really had to kind of check out of it, and just basically it was like work, play, family. But like I said, the play's over, and I slowly kind of was like, magic is fun. I enjoy playing it, and I started kind of playing again. So that's really where I've been. The play finished about 3 weeks ago. All right, so 3 or 4 days ago, I 5-0'd a friendly league with this list, and if you've seen some of the Jeskai lists, like this one from Harlan Fire, I'm not sure how to say his name, my apologies, or there was one shortly after that which was very similar, different sideboard choices, played Gideon. And then even more recently, there was in Grand Prix Kobe this one by that guy Ryuichi Tamada, and then this one is the same one? No, another very similar one to that. But where I started kind of getting involved was before these two. But they were pretty much the inspiration for the list. I said that after I was going to talk about the 2 decks I made, but whatever, we'll come back to them. So I 5-0'd a friendly league on Magic Online with this list. Very, very, very similar to Harlan's list, which again is here. But I opted to, my thought was, okay, well, instead of the Molten Rains, if we're going to become a board control deck with Elspeth and Supreme Verdicts and whatnot, maybe we just want some more raw card advantage. I wanted to try the Ancestral Visions. I did try the Molten Rains at FNM. I just wasn't too impressed with them. I think they're awkward because in a perfect world, you'd like to go, like, if you're going to disrupt their mana, if you're going to play Geist, you want to go, like, maybe Spreading Seas on turn 2 and then Geist on turn 3 and just hope that turn 2 play to disrupt their mana slows them down by that one turn so that you can like have a Geist in play and then untap with a Cryptic Command or something. But anyway, I played this list. I might have even only played 14 sideboard cards. I can't remember. I mean, I was just slapping things together. I've tried some other silly things lately. Not silly, but just trying all kinds of stuff. Flash. I tried a list with 4 Geist of St. Traft and 4 Mantis Riders, which Mantis Rider did die, but was oftentimes pretty good. It exceeded my expectations, but maybe not enough to want to run it. Anyway, nothing really crazy to talk about here regarding card choices. It's cards everybody knows about, and it's very similar list to the recent Jeskai Geist list that have been doing well. There's only a few, but there's usually none. It also makes me question, like, have I been building my Jeskai Geist decks the wrong way? I don't know if that's true. I really don't know. I mean, if you follow my channel, you know that one thing I feel like I struggle with is knowing what's right. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of theory crafting, but I feel like in, testing, sometimes I'm like, I have trouble deciding this was clearly better than that. And one of those things is it better to be like all in on the burn plan? Or is it better to be like couple cryptics, couple restos, couple quellers, like more of a well-rounded deck? You're more well-rounded, but you're less focused. I think the decks that are maxing out on like the burn spells and the electrolyzes are trying to be more of a disruptive burn deck, and obviously against creature decks it can be really amazing. So I don't know what's right, but the reason I wanted to play it was because it had 4 cryptic commands. It had 4 electrolyzes. It had 4 remands. It had 4 Serum Visions. It had 4, 8, 12, 16 cards that draw a card. And then 4 Snapcaster Mages. That's insane. There's so much value. And really, if you think about it, if you have that many cards that draw a card, maybe you don't need necessarily Ancestral Visions because you have so much velocity in the deck. I don't know. But anyway, 5-0'd with this friendly league. 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago, whatever it was, 5-0'd a competitive league with this list. And there's some spicy numbers in here. And so I'm going to eschew talking about the standard stuff and just talk about some of the more non-conventional things. Okay, so Disrupting Shoal. I've always been kind of curious about Disrupting Shoal in a Geist deck, and the reason is, so take Jund for example. You can tap out for Geist, and when they go to play Liliana, you can cast Disrupting Shoal for no mana, pitching your extra copy of Geist or Electrolyze or Vendilion Click or Spellqueller or whatever it is. And in a perfect world, you then are able to untap, attack, play your 4th land, and hold up Cryptic or something, and you're in such an amazing position at that point. If you can have Geist on an empty board with counters in hand and mana up, it's totally insane. You're very favored to win at that point, I think. I don't know that it's good enough, but it hasn't. I wouldn't want to run like 4 of them or 3 of them, but maybe as a one of it's fine. And the reason is, if that situation comes up, you have it available to you. But the other thing is, there are a lot of cheap spells in Modern. A lot of things cost 1 or 2, and at 1 mana, if you're countering something that costs 1 mana and not exiling another blue card, it's cancel at that point. I mean, you're kind of overpaying for Modern, but it can be a hard counter. Even late in the game, you could counter a Tarmogoyf for 4 mana. So it's the other reason I wanted to try it actually was because Spellqueller dies a lot in the Flash deck, and I always thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if you could like Spellqueller something, and then when they have that 1 mana up to Fatal Push or Bolt it, you could Disrupting Shoal, pitch a Spell Snare. I don't know that it's good enough. I wasn't sure what to cut to just start testing it, so I just trimmed to the 4th Cryptic because it's kind of the most expensive spell in the deck, and as amazing as Cryptic is, you can sometimes get Cryptic flooded. That being said, if I was going to stop running it, I would probably just put the 4th Cryptic back in. Has great synergy with Geist, and it's just an amazing spell. The Quellers, instead of the 4 Electrolyzes, were primarily just sometimes Electrolyze just isn't good enough. You can spell Queller a Thought-Knot Seer, for example. Electrolyze doesn't do anything there. And the thing I like about Spell Queller too is that if your primary threats are Geist of St. Traft, sometimes I found myself in a position where I wish I had another creature to attack people with. And so Queller is sort of a dual card, right? It's a threat, but it's also interaction. I also wanted like more flash creatures. I was trying to figure out how to put like a couple of Vendilion Clicks in the sideboard. That way when you're playing against decks where you really can't tap out, you have more flash creatures to employ. But I didn't do the clicks. I just decided to try the Quellers. And then again, one more note on Disrupting Shoal. If you have the 4 Cryptics and the 8 3-drops that are also blue, and then a bunch of blue 2-drops, you actually have a reasonable number of exile targets with Disrupting Shoal. Again, I can't imagine running more than 1, primarily because if the situation comes up, you have it to consider. But if it doesn't, it could potentially also be a hard counter at some point. I have countered a turn 1 expedition map when I wasn't even on the board yet. I've countered an Insolent Neonate in this league, which was pretty key, I think, to winning that game 1. The decks I played in this league, they were more favorable, I will say that. But I played against Dredge, which I won against, partly because of this, but then I drew a bunch of surgical extractions. And actually, Geist just crushed in that game. I won I essentially, the first game I ended up winning the race because of Geist's Saint Trash. And, when Bloodghasts and Prized Amalgams come into play, Bloodghast can't block, and Prized Amalgam comes into play tapped. So that's more or less the main deck. In the sideboard, like I said earlier, Molten Rain I think is just flat out better. However, it competes with your 3s, and if you're playing a Geist deck, in a perfect world, what you want to do is slam a Geist on 3. And so I think Spreading Seas lines up a bit better. I think what you're hoping to do is like play a Spreading Seas on 2, and you're not going to, it's more of a tempo play, right? Like maybe you're going to disrupt what their plans are and set them one turn back. But the idea is you play their Spreading Seas, you disrupt them, they have to spend a turn like figuring out what to do, getting their mana right, whatever it is, and you can drop a Geist of Saint Trap. But again, they were that one turn behind now, so that maybe you can untap with a Geist and more counter magic. You know what the rest of these cards are for. The other spiciness is these Dusk Dawns. There is a legacy version of this card that costs 1 and 2 white, and I think it's destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. I was telling some friends recently, wouldn't that be great if we had it in Modern? That was before this was spoiled. Then this was spoiled, and I wanted to test it. I wasn't sure that it was going to be good enough. That's another reason, actually, not to have the clicks and not to have Blade Splicers and not to have Restoration Angels, because there's always this tenuous relationship with board wipes and running creatures in a Jeskai midrange list. You can't really do it, and you always want to run. When you're looking at the spells that can kill multiple things at once, you generally need to run things like Engineered Explosives or Is it Static Caster, things that don't also kill your Geists and your Quellers or your Restoration Angels. And so, like in a Geist Resto Queller deck, you can't really run Supreme Verdict. But this doesn't kill Geist, it doesn't kill Spell Queller, and it doesn't kill Snapcaster Mage. And it has this potential for this late game upside, which is if your Geist has died and your Snapcasters have died, you can cast 5 mana and get them all back. So going back to something I said about Ancestral Visions and card velocity, in a grindy game, this is sort of similar. It's like drawing cards. And so between all the not cantrips, but all the cards that draw a card, this and then something like the secondary effect, you might not need the Ancestral Visions. Now, I've never cast the 5 mana side. I have cast Dusk numerous times. In testing, I won a game against Eldrazi in which I had a Geist. I think they Thought Not Seared. I can't remember the exact scenario, but I drew the Dusk off the top and I killed two creatures, attacked with Geist, and I can't remember exactly how it played out, but it was key. It was pivotal to winning the game. And so anyway, what's interesting about this is you get to bring these in, but you're going to board out some number of Geists because you probably don't want all 4 in certain matchups. But the difference is you can kind of keep in a couple. You can keep in 2, you can keep in 3, and you might even have this dream scenario in which you play a Geist and there's like a couple of Tarmogoyfs or something, and you're able to just do a one-sided Wrath that could potentially grind with you later in the game. I don't know if 3 is the right number. I don't know if anything's the right number, but I actually think that this card might be good enough. And the thing is, even if you don't have a Geist in play, a lot of times it's still just going to be Wrath of God. The one other thing I wanted to mention is the decks you're bringing it in against. If we just pop over here real quick, they don't really have small dudes. You're going to bring it in against the Shadow decks, against Eldrazi-tron, this other Shadow deck. Probably bring it against Abzan if they're running. It doesn't kill Lingering Souls, but it kills like traditional Abzan. It would kill their Goyfs and their. Well, this is different. actually, but anyway, you get the point. Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep running. I've actually went ahead and ordered like 2 or 3 online because I actually are in paper because I think in the right shell it is good enough. And then the thing is, you against a deck like Eldrazi, you get to take out a lot of your removal that doesn't do anything and bring in these cards that do, but also you know that you're not going to kill any of your creatures while you're going to kill all of theirs. Like I said, none of the decks you're bringing it in against run small things, so it's always going to be a one-sided wrath. So I think that, I mean, I'm still testing it, but I've been relatively pleased with it so far. I played 10 games. I've never cast the more expensive half, but yeah. So that's all I guess I have to say about. Oh, the one thing I did want to mention. So what you essentially have, the other thing we're not running that Harlan did is Anger of the Gods. And the idea, at least for me, is that, again, you can't really run Anger if you're going to run a bunch of Quellers. You can't really run Anger if you're going to run a bunch of Geists. Now, normally, against a lot of those decks, you're going to board out your Geists. You're going to board out, especially if you're going to bring in board wipes. And you're really kind of changing the texture of the deck. You're taking out all of your Geist of St. Trasts. You're taking out, if you have Quellers, you're taking those out. And you're becoming more of a board control deck, and you really lose your ability to close the game down. And like I said earlier, typically when you're playing Geist, you want to run sweepers that don't kill him. And so my thoughts, at least right now, are, this is how I kind of think about my sideboard. For mana decks, we got these guys, and they're obviously useful in many different situations. For like spell-based combo decks, still have a couple of dispels and negates. Now, normally I like to have 2 dispels and 2 negates, but because I also have the Quellers, it's kind of like having, again, it's almost like a modal spell. It's kind of like having more counter spells. And then obviously we normally will have like 3 or 4 cryptics, so we're more counter heavy, in addition to more 2 mana counters, and we got the spell snare. So we get to, I think we can get away without all of the dispels and negates, at least for now. The surgical extractions, obviously, for decks that rely on singular cards or just graveyard-based decks like Dredge. And then for creature matchups, this is how I think of it. I have my Izzet Staticasters and my Engineer and my Electrolyzes for the small creature decks. So Affinity is a Staticasters and Electrolyze. Collected Company decks is a Staticasters and Electrolyze. Against Eldrazi and the Shadow decks, no is a Staticaster, no Electrolyze. But then I have these Board Sweepers that don't kill my own creatures. And so I got like the big creature decks, the little creature decks, the graveyard decks, the mana decks, combo decks, and then Stony Silence. I don't even know if I need it because I think Affinity is already a pretty good matchup. But it is nice that it could potentially, play against Lantern, get to play it, play against just random artifact stuff. It's kind of nice to have. And so that's the deck. You will notice that there's no Iganjo Castle. I don't know what to do about that yet. I could take this island. I was doing the math earlier, and I think if that's an Iganjo Castle, we still end up with like 21 or 22 mana sources. And again, each Serum Visions counts as 0.45 of a color. And then I also, so that's like 1.8. And then I figured each Remand is a cantrip on the way to 3. So if I'm trying to hit 3 mana, each cantrip counts as 0.25. So I add that as well. Anyway, long story short, colored and mana wise, I think the deck is fine. Okay, so that's the deck. So I've talked about where I've been. I talked about the decks. Okay, how did I come about these lists? I can't think if I already kind of talked about it, but I saw this list by Harlan Fryer, tried it at FNM, played with it a bit online, didn't necessarily like the Molten Rain so much, didn't necessarily like the Elspeth. I mean, she's incredibly powerful, but we are running like 23 lands, and we're talking about a 6-drop, and maybe there's a way, again, with like the Dust Dawns, in which we don't want to completely board out. We don't want to take all of our guys out and become a control deck completely. Also, again, I think that the Spreading Seas are better on curve with Geist and the Molten Rains. This one, I think Gideon, he's fine, but I think he's better in a deck with more creatures. I've tested him, and like They seem to always find a way to kill him, whether it's double bolting him or what have you. This particular deck was just, again, I can't imagine 4 Logic Knots right. I mean, I'm sure this guy I know he's much better at Magic than me, but I just still can't imagine that 4 Logic Knots right. I will say that I've seen people discuss the deck and I'm like, how can you have 4 Logic Knot and 4 Grim Lavamancer? My thoughts on that are probably in the matchups where he wants Grim Lavamancer, he's just taking out the Logic Knots. Like, against the Collected Company decks, outside of like Dispel and a Negate, I don't think you really want to be fighting them on the stack as much. And so you can probably take out like 3 Logic Knots and then bring in 3 Grim Lavamancers, or even 4 Logic Knots and bring in a Grim Lavamancer and a Dispel. And I think that tenuous relationship between the two cards kind of goes away. And then again, there was this one I saw as well. I had already made some of the Dust Dawn testing. Again, you see Molten in here, but I stand by what I said about it's like if you're playing against Tron and you have a Molten Rain and a Geist in hand, what do? I'd much rather just Spreading Seas their land and then play Geist. And then what is this last one here? Nothing. Alright, so that's it. I don't have any major revelations, but I wanted to share with you guys. So with these type of versions of Geist, I've had some pretty good, some reasonable results, at least on Magic Online. Okay, so the one crazy thing that I mentioned before I wrap this video up, excuse me, this is going to be a bit silly. And I've never seen anybody mention it anywhere. And I've mentioned it to Jason Clark, I mentioned it to Nick Hansen, but it's probably just kind of silly. But it's actually, let's see, can I do double select? Blue white. It is, where is it at? It's a 4-mana spell. Did I get rid of it? Alright, hold on a second. Type. Instant. Maybe vanish into memory. So let's read this. Exile target creature. You draw cards equal to that creature's power. At the beginning of your next upkeep, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you do, discard cards equal to that creature's toughness. So you know how sometimes you have to suicide Geist into things? You can attack with Geist, get the Angel token, Geist dies because they block it, and when the trigger goes on the stack to exile the Angel, you cast Vanish into memory, you draw 4 cards, and then at your upkeep, because it's a token, it doesn't come back into the battlefield, and so you don't have to discard anything. It's probably not any good. Not to mention Vanish into Memory is going to compete with Cryptic Command and other 4-drops. But it's a thing you could do. It is a 4-mana draw 4 at instant speed. But again, you kind of have to do it on the Angel token. So it's kind of also narrow. That's why there's only one here. But I've always kind of wanted to try it. Like, put one in the deck and see what happens. Maybe it's ridiculous and I don't know it. Anyway, alright. So that's it. I'm going to pause the video and think if there's anything else I didn't mention. Yeah, no, nothing comes to mind. I have to give the guys who just went on the all-in burn plan some props, because I just never would have been brave enough to do this. I would have been like, I would have wanted to. If somebody showed me this list, I would have been like, oh my god, 4 Remands, 4 Electrolyzes, 4 Cryptics, 4 Serum Visions, that's amazing. I want to cast all those spells all the time. But that can't be right. That can't be right. But those guys didn't let all that self-doubt enter their mind, and they just went for it. And however good or bad the lists are, they're freaking sweet. I love them. I always wanted 4 Cryptic Commands in my deck. I don't care if they're bad. That's what I want them in there. I always want 4 Electrolyzes. I love it killing things and drawing cards, countering things and drawing cards, countering things and drawing cards, drawing cards. It's amazing. All right, I don't think I have anything else to say. I think I went 4-1 with this list. Where the Mantis Riders shined the greatest was in this matchup against one of the black-white, like Eldrazi and Taxes, because Mantis Rider was single-handed. It was amazing. Mantis Rider held off like 3 creatures for like 3 attacks. It was like a Thalia couldn't attack into Mantis Rider because of Vigilance. The Leonin Arbiter couldn't attack because of Vigilance. Like, I was still attacking them, but they couldn't attack into it. And then a Tidehollow Sculler. And the haste is relevant. I mean, there was a few games where I like cast Geists and then followed it up with a Mantis Rider and attacked for a lot. But anyway, I don't know that it's better than what I was doing in the other deck. Okay, so I said I don't have anything else to say, so that I'm going to be done. We'll close with putting this back on the screen for anybody that's interested. Let me know what your thoughts are. Sorry it's been so long since I made some videos. I don't know that I'll make gameplay videos anytime soon. But who knows? Maybe I will, or maybe I'll pop in with a discussion about a thing here or there. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. And I hope that you play Jeskai and win a bunch of stuff. Good night.